Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. So today is Tuesday, August 5th at Freiburg New Church Assembly at 9 a.m. lecture, and I'm Reverend Catherine Lauber, and I'm going to be sharing this morning some spiritual tools for heavenly life. As this second week of camp, we're looking at practicing heaven. You got a little bit of taste of what we're going to talk about in the worship this morning, but we're going to expand on it as we look at seeing what life would look like if we lived like the angels do. And we did that while we're here on earth. And I have some ideas from Swedenborg and a couple of practices that we'll try out. And some things that you can take home with you and put into practice when you leave here. So before we get there, so let's begin with the idea that, so Susanna included in the theme outline for this week the idea of the universal heaven. Swedenborg's idea that heaven is in the form of a human being, the universal human, as is called. And so it's one of those concepts that may sound poetic at first. Heaven is in the shape of a human. That's very lovely, and we can relate to that. But the more you sit with it, the more that it transforms your understanding and the way that you think about yourself and your community and the world around you. So Swedenborg tells us that all of heaven in its totality is organized in the shape of a human being. Now, we understand that not physically, but spiritually, right? But this is not an arbitrary shape. It's because God himself is human, divinely human. And that comes from God. All that comes from God bears this heavenly design. So in Heaven and Hell, Swedenborg writes, it is a secret not yet known in this world, but we know it now, that heaven, taken in a single all-inclusive grasp, reflects a single individual. Knowing this, knowing particulars and details about it, is the hallmark of angelic intelligence there. Okay, so the hallmark of angelic intelligence is grasping this idea that heaven is in the form of a single individual. And so the angels refer to heaven as the universal and divine human. Divine because the Lord's divine nature constitutes heaven. So when we think about that, each angel in heaven corresponds to some part of the human form, okay? And that's based on their unique love and function. So Swedenborg would suggest that those whose highest love is understanding and wisdom would be in the general province of the head. And those who serve through compassion and care may correspond to the hands and the heart. But each individual has their own gift and their own place, and each is very connected to the whole. And it is the love and the usefulness of the angels that determines their place in heaven. And so no one is useless. Everyone matters because everyone is needed to become part of this full body. And so the image of heaven as a person is not just a metaphor. It is a living system. So when we think of it as a living system of love and cooperation and divine purpose, every part is in harmony, and every being that is there is devoted to the full functioning and the usefulness of the whole. That means everyone is in a state of being aligned with love to the Lord and living in harmony with others. And so there's no selfishness in heaven. And the angels love others as themselves. And this means that everyone is cared for. So Swedenborg teaches that the angels are happiest when they are serving others in a meaningful way. So each person finds their calling and then does it out of love. And I think this is part of the reason why so many of us spend a lot of time trying to figure out what our passion and purpose in life is, right? Because there is this pull towards realizing the truth of our love and the truth that we have a calling and a purpose and a passion, and that we have a desire to fulfill that. That is a heavenly desire. And so as we come to remember our true loves and then connect with what we love and then put that into practice, we are living heaven now. Okay? So that is one way of living a heavenly life. And it's honoring what we love and putting that into useful practice. And it could be anything. So I had a roommate once who loved raking leaves. They loved raking leaves, right? Like it really was a passion. And so they would, in the fall and in the spring, get out there with the rake and be like just joyfully happy, raking up the leaves, which helped me immensely because it's not my favorite thing to do, right? So in that simple act of raking the leaves, right? My friend, this roommate, was living their love, putting it into useful practice. So pay attention to what it is that lifts your spirit and what you love spending your time doing. And then find ways of kind of incorporating that more into your life, right? That is one way of practicing heaven. So Swedenborg offers several other practical ways to live heaven now, and so I'm just going to go through a few of them, then I think we'll have a little conversation and see where we are. So I'm going to start with foster humility and gratitude. Now, many of you know that in the past profession I worked as a psychotherapist, and so gratitude is something that I've been working with spiritually and psychologically and practically, but we know that it is good for us, and we've got the science now to support that. But it's this spiritual idea that comes through all of the traditions, and when we recognize that all good comes from the Lord, not from ourselves, and then with that humble attitude, express gratitude for the life we have and all of our experiences. That humility and thankfulness brings us closer to the Lord, and it brings us in line with the attitudes of heaven and the angels. And so we hear this in the words of Psalm 100, 3-4. And I'm going to share with a slight alternate translation. Many of you will recognize this verse, but I've got a slight alteration in the translation. Know that the Lord is God. It is He who made us, and not we ourselves. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and praise His name. So right there we have a beautiful expression of humility and gratitude, recognizing that it is God who made us, not we ourselves. Humility. And then entering His gates with thanksgiving, gratitude. So these are extremely powerful spiritual tools, and we now have the science that kind of finally caught up with spiritual wisdom that teaches us how to live a happy, healthy life. And gratitude has been extensively researched and shown to have some very real positive impacts on our health and our well-being. Some of the positive impacts, a gratitude practice increases our resilience, right? So it makes us stronger and better able to kind of face life's challenges when they come, because they will inevitably. Resilience is that ability to kind of bounce back, kind of move through things. Gratitude helps increase our resilience. It strengthens our social relationships. So when you think about it, when we're grateful for our friends and our family and grateful for spending time together, going out, to the roller rink or the bowling alley, then we tend to attract more of those wonderful things into our life, and we have stronger connections and healthier social relationships. Gratitude reduces stress. Absolutely. Life can get pretty stressful, and so if we just take a moment and, kind of be thankful for something that we can recognize. Waking up this morning, seeing the sunset the other night, having a nice cup of coffee this morning. It changes something. Our brain chemistry changes, and it helps kind of neutralize stress. And gratitude's also been known to reduce depression. So, right, like it will help really shift that low mood and help us build up that muscle towards thanks and gratitude. And did you know that there's actually a school of gratitude? It's called the Greater Good School at Berkeley, California. And they study what it means to have a meaningful life. That's what they study, what it means to have a meaningful life. And they focus on well-being, resilience, and compassion. And so gratitude is a huge component of all of those things. So there's also a correlation between having a gratitude practice and life satisfaction. So people who have a gratitude practice feel like their lives are happier, they're more satisfied, they're more successful. And it's a simple tool that we can use on a regular basis to heal our minds, heal our bodies, raise our vibration, expand our level of consciousness. And science also says that if we can put our attention onto one thing for 20 seconds continuously, one thing, 20 seconds, then it imprints on our brain, and it causes physical changes in the way that our brains work. So science also says that you can write a gratitude letter once a week for 20 minutes to anyone. You don't have to send it, but if you spend 20 minutes once a week writing a gratitude letter, the writing awakens those chemicals, and it impacts the neurological framework of our brain. Okay? So here's one of the activity portions of my lecture this morning. We're going to give this a try. Okay? We're going to see if we can. I know you can, but we're actually going to do it. We're going to sit and be grateful for 20 seconds. And I'm going to do the timing, so nobody has to count or worry about time. But I'm going to invite you to think of one thing, right? And I'm going to invite you to kind of take a couple of deep breaths and pull one thing. We don't want to jump around. Take a couple of deep breaths as we shift from listening outwardly to focusing inwardly, and invite that one thing that you are grateful for right now. That one thing. It could be a person or an experience or a circumstance. Okay. And we're going to just focus on that one thing for 20 seconds. Okay, ready? Go. Okay, good job, everyone. Good job. Yeah, take a deep breath. Did anyone feel the shift in vibration in your inner shift, just in 20 seconds? Yeah. Okay. What a powerful tool. You've now imprinted on your brain that feeling of gratitude and all the wonderful chemicals that go with that and all the wonderful brain changes that happen. And you can do that in the course of your everyday life, at any time, at any moment, practicing becoming like the angels, practicing humility and gratitude for just 20 seconds at a time. And so when we repeat that over and over and over and over again, can have a really profound impact on your life. Okay. So keep that one in your back pocket. Next, practice forgiveness and compassion. Now, we understand forgiveness. It's a profound spiritual concept. When we really strive to let go of our grudges and our angers and our resentments, and to see others with compassion, that's when we're living an angelic life. Heaven is filled with mercy and compassion. So as we get into that vibration, into that vein of forgiveness, we're living like the angels. And as we do that, here on earth, we begin to create that, or build that heaven within, strengthen that heaven within us. And according to Swedenborg, this inner transformation that we practice here and now is what prepares us for actual life in heaven. Because it is a state, heaven is a state of being in harmony with that divine love and wisdom. And so forgiveness, central concept to Christian life, deeply resonant in Scripture. It's increasingly validated through modern psychology. Swedenborg, of course, has deep illumination to tell us about it. So where do we find forgiveness in Scripture? We begin with the words of Jesus in Matthew 18. And it's the parable of the unforgiving servant. So Jesus was talking to the crowds, and then Peter came up to him and said, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times?" And Jesus said to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7 times." Jesus wasn't just suggesting that we forgive often. He was teaching that forgiveness must become our way of life. It's not just a moral obligation, but a spiritual practice that restores our own hearts to forgiveness and wholeness. And so when the ego mind thinks about forgiveness, we might think that, oh, well, we're letting someone off the hook, or we're denying that a wrong took place, or we're denying that justice is needed. But when we think about it from our higher minds, from our spiritual minds, and when we think about forgiveness from our eternal minds, we come to see how it's a releasing of ourselves from the burden of resentments and a restoring of relationship, even if we don't ever see the person again, right? So there may be people that we need to forgive, and then we need to leave, right? Like we want to pair our love and compassion with our wisdom, and sometimes that means holding boundaries. But we want to forgive and let those resentments go, and heal not only ourselves but any connection that we have with another person. And so forgiveness is a two-way path. So when we forgive others, we open our own souls to receive healing and grace. And then we're living a life resonant with the angels of heaven. So contemporary psychology confirms this, again, what spiritual traditions have long taught, that forgiveness is also good for our health. And so clinical studies have shown that people who practice forgiveness on a regular basis, they experience lower levels of anxiety and depression. I think that's probably a profound side effect of forgiveness. Because when we're not holding all of that heavy, yucky energy inside of us, our nervous systems calm down, our brains kind of calm down, and we reduce anxiety and depression. Forgiveness also reduces blood pressure and heart stress. That makes sense, doesn't it? Because often it's resentments that we hold in our hearts. And of course, energetically, it's going to have a physical impact. So if we practice forgiveness, we can reduce blood pressure and heart stress. Leads to improved relationships and social connections. Again, yeah, sure, right? When we can recognize that, sometimes people hurt us, and sometimes it's unintentional. And if we can love them and forgive them and still include them in our life, then we are improving our relationships, because none of us is perfect, right? When we forgive ourselves also for the times that we've made mistakes and we might have hurt someone and we didn't mean to, right? That also strengthens our ability to be in healthy relationship with others. And generally, greater overall well-being and happiness comes from practicing forgiveness. So it's not only good for our eternal souls, but it's also beneficial for our physical lives. And it doesn't mean that we're forgetting or excusing harm, as I already said. And as psychologist Everett Worthington writes, forgiveness is a decision to release feelings of resentment or vengeance towards a person who's harmed you, regardless of whether they deserve it. Okay? So there's no judgment involved in forgiveness. It is a practice. It is a heavenly practice that we are called to do. And so when we can practice forgiveness and make this shift, releasing resentments, then we shift our internal condition and build that internal heaven. So Swedenborg offers a perspective on forgiveness where forgiveness is not transactional, and it's not something that God withholds or grants depending on our actions, right? Swedenborg teaches that God is forgiveness itself. God is forgiveness itself. A constant stream of love and mercy flowing toward all people at all times. And in True Christianity, Swedenborg writes, the Lord forgives everyone and never punishes them, because the Lord is love itself and good itself. Okay? So forgiveness is always present for ourselves, for others. And God's love and forgiveness never stops shining down on us. It's always available to us. But Swedenborg also says that genuine forgiveness, both received and given, requires repentance. Okay? And so we have to have that intentional turning away from the harm and from the wrong, and the intentional turning towards the good. And so in Swedenborg's terms, to forgive is to turn away from evil and no longer will it. Okay? And so when this happens, we're being regenerated. We are taking those steps to be intentional about releasing ourselves from the burden of unforgiveness. The burden of sin would be the theological language. But it is a transformation. It's an inner transformation. It's a transformation of the heart. We stop identifying with the injury. Right? So whether we caused the injury or whether someone injured us, when we forgive, we stop identifying with the injury, and we begin to live from a new place of connection and relationship aligned with the Lord's love. And this is what it looks like to live a life of heaven and to be like the angels. And so we get to practice that while we're here, as we grow and regenerate and move into heavenly life. So I'm going to ask you, if you're willing, to try a forgiveness practice with me. If it's uncomfortable, I'm going to ask you to just sit quietly and take a few deep breaths. But for those who are willing to kind of move into forgiveness, I just invite you to bring to mind a person, a situation, a circumstance that has caused disharmony in a relationship, right? Where there has been a negative charge between you and another person, between you and a situation, or between you and God. Just one. Bring to mind. And I want you to imagine that person or that situation sitting in front of you, taking a deep breath. I want you to ask for forgiveness. In your mind, in your heart. Ask for forgiveness. Invite the Lord into the process. Inviting that forgiving presence to be the power that heals the connection. Allow your heart to release the hurt. Release the resentment. Ask the angels to come and take it away and transform it into love. It is through forgiveness that we are healed and that we heal. And when we can say, I forgive, I forgive, I forgive, we allow that healing to transform hearts and minds. So just say that a few times to yourself. I forgive. And as we experience the power of forgiveness, we express gratitude. And so I invite you to share an expression of thanks and gratitude. And then taking a deep breath, returning back into the present moment. Thank you, Lord. So I'm just going to outline a few of the steps that we just walked through. These are based on Swedenborg's teachings. A practical tool for forgiveness. The first step is to acknowledge the hurt. We didn't spend a lot of time on that, but that's a big first step. We acknowledge the hurt, because pretending that it doesn't matter is not forgiveness. Pretending that it doesn't matter is avoidance, and we're just, kind of pushing the problem down until it comes back up later somewhere. So we need to acknowledge the hurt. We need to name it. We need to feel it. We need to grieve it. And once we acknowledge the hurt, then we have the choice, and we can choose release. Okay? So that is our active part in the process. We choose release. That doesn't mean we're denying what happened. It means that we're choosing to release the hurt and the resentment and the anger and anything else we might be feeling. And so we do this with wisdom. If boundaries are required, we establish boundaries. If reconciliation is required, we can move forward with that as well. But we choose release. Then we turn towards the Lord, right? Swedenborg teaches that all genuine forgiveness flows from God into us. And so we don't manufacture forgiveness. We receive it and we pass it on. Okay? So that's why we ask for God's help. We turn towards the Lord. And then we allow ourselves to open to transformation. So when we let go of resentment, we open the door for new life. We open the door for growth, for healing, for love. And allow that transformation to move through us. And then we close with gratitude. Always a great practice, gratitude. We start with gratitude, we can end with gratitude. Practice gratitude all day. So, but we finish with a word of thanks. So there is a 5-step Swedenborgian forgiveness practice. And psychology tells us that it will heal us. Swedenborg tells us it will do even more than that. It will transform us into heaven. And so practicing forgiveness is another powerful spiritual tool. I'm going to move through just a few more very briefly, kind of actual tools for living heaven now, and then we'll have a little discussion. So the next one is to live according to the Lord's commandments, right? So we have that, we've been taught that putting the teachings of the commandments into practice in our lives, that is, there's a core practice of the Swedenborgian Church. And practicing those qualities that are contained in the Ten Commandments every day. And so Swedenborg teaches the depth of the Ten Commandments, right? Like, and we're going to have a study on that at Freiburg New Church in the Springs. But when we practice honesty and respect and fidelity and integrity and forgiveness and kindness, right? All of those are contained within the Ten Commandments. We are practicing our spiritual lives and building that heaven within. Praying and inviting the Lord's presence, right? Making time for prayer and meditation, reflection, and inviting the Lord in to guide our thoughts and our actions. Inviting the Lord to, I think this was from Reverend Chuck's lecture last week, or preaching last week. When we invite the Lord to be our eyes, when we pray that, Lord, be my eyes, that I can see this situation through your eyes. Lord, be my ears, that I can hear this situation through ears of love and kindness. Lord, be my words, so that my words express those heavenly qualities. Be my presence, Lord, so that I can be that channel, that vessel of God's divine flow. Praying and inviting the Lord's presence is a powerful, powerful spiritual practice. And what better way to live a life like the angels than to be in constant prayer with the Lord and allowing God's presence to fill every thought, every word, every action, right? That sounds like heaven right there, doesn't it? And of course, usefulness, right? Huge concept of engaging in good and useful work. Whatever your role is, whatever you are engaged in, it is heavenly when it is motivated by that internal wish to be of service to someone else, when it is motivated by that desire for someone else's service and joy, for the joy of others. right? Feeling the joy of others within ourselves, that is heavenly joy. And Swedenborg teaches us it's tied to usefulness in all that we do. So I think I'll stop there so that we have time for discussion questions. But just to summarize, Swedenborg assures us that heaven is not a distant dream, but it is a reality that we can start building now. And that every act of kindness, every word of truth, every time we choose love over ego, we bring heaven a little bit closer. And so we practice, because heaven doesn't require perfection. Heaven requires orientation, properly ordering our loves, direction so that we know where we're going. Requires a willingness to grow spiritually. And Swedenborg reminds us that the more one is in heaven, the more deeply one is a human being. So if we want to become more human, more truly human, let us live the life of heaven now. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I'd invite you, if you wanted to share about your experience with the practices or any ideas that might have arisen while you were listening this morning.
This is Susanna. I'm reminded with your talk about gratitude and forgiveness that in chaplaincy school we were taught 4 things that people need to express before they die to various people in their lives. Thank you, I love you, I forgive you, please forgive me. Oh. And that's what we need to process before we transition.
Yeah, that sounds like, sums it up, yeah. Yeah, it's such a release, right? We can hold on to so much, and when our minds get caught up and tangled up in in the resentments or the grudges, right? Like not only does it kind of separate us from God's love, but it makes us sick, right? Physically ill. So we want to be happy and healthy. So practicing these tools helps get us there. Any
other? One way I like to think about, well, first of all, thank you very much. Enjoyed your lecture, Catherine. I like to think about forgiveness is that it's, and you more or less said this, but it's sort of a different plane of being, and that when we get there, it's not that it's a transactional, I'm forgiving you and I'm letting you off the hook, but it's just that there's no blame. And that's why if we don't judge others, we won't be judged, because if we're in that space of there's no blame, we're all just doing the best we can, then I'm also not judging myself. And so and just about the one exercise, I sort of got stuck. I thought I was going to be asking for forgiveness or forgiving. So I conjured up someone that I needed to forgive, but then I needed to ask them for forgiveness, and I thought, well, that's the wrong person, and I thought, no, that's the right person, so I did it, but they sort of just loomed there right here, and there was just this very negative feeling coming at me, and I just had to pray for the Lord to protect me. So that was a weird experience.
Okay, thank you for sharing, because that actually wasn't an accident. So there is that aspect of asking forgiveness first, where we are with someone for whom they have harmed us, because it has a profound shift, and when we invite God in to help us clear that, it moves things, well, to a deeper level, like you said, a deeper level. So, but it's powerful. I encourage everyone to keep practicing, really. Right? Keep practicing. I know when I started, I had that particular practice. I had a very similar experience, and keep going. Yeah, keep going.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to hear you and the practices. And I think for me, the forgiveness aspect is such a powerful one. I've practiced a lot of gratitude over the years, but I think forgiveness, when I heard you say, don't ever repeat, don't ever go back. You don't have to go back to that. There was that moment of clarity that sometimes we obsess as humans, right? We obsess on that situation, or we obsess in that discord between another human. And I think that's a beautiful thought. And I was also thinking about, really standing in that, the spiritual welcoming of forgiveness. The welcoming that we are forgiving ourselves as well. Because it's that internal change that we have to make. And when I'm feeling it, I have to, start my day over and really bring myself into that present moment to say it's not happening right now. And when I've done a lot of trauma work in the past, I could hold myself. I was taught to hold pillows and around me to know that it's not happening right now.
Right, yeah.
And I think those are really important gifts of forgiveness for ourselves as well, because the trauma is into us and we're triggered with trauma. And in seminary, I was given a lot of work that realizing we've all experienced trauma. And right now in our world is a very traumatic place, right? And so as we open ourselves up to really protect that sacred within yourself so that it can continue to heal the world and having good thoughts of others.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Lynn. Good. Do we have any other thoughts to share this morning? Yeah, Martha.
Yes, this is Martha. I wasn't going to say anything, but I grew up with a parent that seemed to never forgive. We called it hold grudges. And it not only affects you when you're like that, but it can affect people around you, all around you. And I said I would never be like that, but I find that I can be, and I think I'm like what you said, Reverend Catherine, that sometimes I think I've forgiven, but I've pushed it under the rug, like the dirt that you don't want to show anyone. And but it does take real practice, but it does make you feel so much better when you really have forgiven.
Thank you, Martha. Yeah. It is a deep practice, and like Lynn was saying, we all have trauma, and I think forgiveness is a tool that really can help us heal those triggers, and bring ourselves healing and forgiveness of any shame or guilt that we might be feeling or holding on to for things that have happened, because it's complicated and life is challenging, and all of these experiences can get stuck. They get stuck in our psyche. They get stuck in our energy field. Get stuck in our spirit, and so. We can partner with the Lord in helping to heal, ourselves and others. Yeah.
Thank you. Your treating of topic that I have a lot of problems with, because like Martha, I think I forgive, but the problem is I don't forget. And so if something triggers that memory, it's right back up there. The other thing is I realize I don't forgive because if something, a misfortune happens to the person who hurt me, I kind of cheer that on. You know, it hasn't gone away.
Yeah, and so when we can recognize that, we can recognize that, okay, it hasn't gone away. Okay, that's fine. And then being willing to sit with it, continue to sit with it, and ask the Lord for continued guidance and strength to move through it. Yeah, I get it.
This is Susanna, and I just want to lift up that we don't have to. We can still do this process of forgiving even after the other person has passed.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, it was my mother. I felt distant from her, and I have a picture of her in my kitchen, and we talk. And I feel like now I can feel the unconditional love behind all the conditions that existed in the material world, because I have a sense of her being more loving and more forgiving because she's an angel. And I feel so good that I've done that for myself, because I was somewhat resentful that we didn't have a closer relationship. But oddly enough, now we do.
You do, yeah, right? And I like, that's just profound, right? Like, just that reality, doesn't that just, fill you with joy? Knowing that we are connected, right? That we're part of the spiritual world, that's all there, right? And that we can continue to engage and communicate. Yeah, beautiful. Any other sharing this morning before we wrap up? No. Yeah.
Sometimes when someone hurts us, and then later on something bad happens to them, we somehow feel as though we were responsible, or might have been responsible, by sort of our resentment escaping from us, and we don't really sure what happened. Sometimes we are happy when something bad happens, or sometimes we're very sad when something bad happens.
Right? I know. See how complicated it is, and how deep. Yeah, and how it comes back to humility, right? It humbly recognizing that God alone is the power, right? That because God alone has the power to be able to love and support us unconditionally all the time. And to love every one of us unconditionally all the time. And so just handing that over in humility, and asking the Lord to guide us and to support us and to love us as we continue to be willing to do our best. We're willing to do our best, and that is what the Lord requires of us. Thank you. Okay, I'm getting the time signal. So thank you, everyone.